I recently read a fascinating article titled "Reasons You Mistakenly Believe Autistic People Are Selfish." In this article, the author lists common behaviors of autistic individuals which seem rude, selfish, uncaring, self-absorbed, or otherwise self-related. In this article, the author, Jamie A. Heidel, explains that the problem is simply that, quote, "we speak different languages." So now you're probably asking yourself, what does any of this have to do with Max Stiana or egoist philosophy? Well, let me enlighten you.
Tim, why don't you enliven me?
I believe that Max Stiana's egoism offers a provocative and alternative lens through which to view this struggle which neurodivergent individuals face in interpersonal and social relationships. If you are new here and you don't know who Max Stiana is, he is a 19th century philosopher who's known for his radical ideas about autonomy, anti-essentialism, and radical rejection of normativity and social obligation. In recent times, there has been a growing awareness and understanding of neurodivergence, which includes conditions like autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and more. However, despite increasing recognition, neurodivergent individuals often face significant challenges due to these misconceptions and society's utter disregard of anyone who cannot be simply put in a box. Unfortunately, it isn't just the lack of conformity which neurodivergent individuals have to deal with, but also the fact that these misconceptions cast neurodivergent individuals as selfish, lacking empathy, or unable to connect with others in meaningful ways. The goal of this video is to explore how Stiana's philosophy of egoism can provide a different and more nuanced framework for understanding neurodivergence. By emphasizing autonomy and rejecting normative pressures, egoism provides a lens through which behaviors often misconstrued as selfish or antisocial can be reinterpreted as legitimate expressions of personal freedom and self-care. Ultimately, I hope to use this framework to challenge harmful stereotypes and foster a more nuanced perspective of neurodivergence. Neurodivergent individuals, or in other words, individuals whose neurological functioning diverges from the typical patterns seen in the general population, often face stigmatization. In this video, I will focus on the following misunderstandings and misconceptions. Neurodivergent individuals, such as those with autism, may struggle with understanding or responding to social cues, which are often taken for granted in typical social interactions. The difficulty can lead to perceptions of them as socially awkward, weird, but most commonly, rude. For instance, an autistic person might not recognize subtle body language or unspoken social norms, leading others to misinterpret their responses as inappropriate or disconnected.
I'm autistic and I question everything. I need to understand everything fully, be that to make a decision on something, to engage with information, to be told to do something. I need to understand why. I need to understand all the fundamental elements of something to be able to engage in it. To make a decision, it's very hard for me to make a decision on something when there's potential variables that are missed. Due to our analytical nature, we can get stuck on all these different variables, hypotheticals, and that can make it really hard to make a decision or to assess something properly without having extra information. Sometimes I ask questions about something that I already know the answer to, just because I need clarity on it. I essentially need reassurance to enable myself to potentially stop myself from going too far into this rabbit hole of questioning, thinking, asking lots more questions. I just need it kind of simplified, so I know that I'm working within the right parameters. It doesn't mean that I don't know what I'm doing, but I think when you're aware of there being so many variables, you're trying to avoid something being missed, something not being considered. And it's hard to let go of that, as it's life, for things to be missed and not considered, because you can't always consider everything. But we essentially try to consider everything as much as possible, all of the details, nuance, to be able to get something, right, or to understand something properly, or to make the correct decision. This can be really exhausting, and it can cause lots of problems, clashes in the workplace. It can cause, clashes with family, friends, relationships, and people can get frustrated at you as well. At the end of the day, the intentions are clear. It's just out of care and interest in detail.
Very often, autistic individuals, for example, are accused of a certain level of disregard within relationships and friendships, which are boiled down to lack of empathy or other antisocial behavior traits. However, in most cases, this problem comes down to communication style and affectual differences.
I'm autistic and I struggle to relax without having control of my environment. In a restaurant, I need to have a wall beside me or a side in which there is not people. I can't be surrounded and kind of trapped in by lots of people. I can't deal with the sensory experience for one, but I also feel as if everyone's just watching me eat. Even if they're not, I can't deal with it. It just makes it impossible to enjoy food. On the train, no one cares what I'm watching on my phone, what TV show I'm watching. But if there's people sat next to me and loads of people behind me, no, I can't focus on it. Like, I just feel like everyone's just glaring at me. It's impossible to get rid of this feeling entirely, even if I can try and block it out. It's so hard to relax when there's so many external factors impacting our experience, and other people play a massive part of this. We can feel so uptight and stressed, and it's not until we have nothing, no one, in our peripheral, in our surroundings, that we can actually and just do what we need to do. Otherwise, I feel like I'm constantly way too switched on about the other people around me, to the point where I just can't focus on myself and I can't focus on what I'm doing. It can put me off food, it can put me off doing anything. It often makes me feel like I've got something to hide. It's definitely to do with perception, but no one really cares if I'm watching whatever I'm watching on Netflix. They just don't. But my brain does not allow me to get over it. It's exhausting to constantly feel like you can't relax until you're in your own space, especially when so few of us are afforded it.
The impact of these misconceptions on neurodivergent individuals can be profound, affecting their personal, social, and professional lives. Neurodivergent individuals may find themselves marginalized or excluded from social groups or professional networks due to misinterpretations of their behavior. Being frequently misunderstood or judged harshly can contribute to mental health challenges, including anxiety, depression, and a diminished sense of self-worth. Misconceptions can also create barriers in educational and occupational settings, where neurodivergent individuals might be unfairly judged or deemed less capable due to their differences in social interaction and communication. These misconceptions not only reinforce negative stereotypes, but also ignore the complexity of neurodivergent experiences. Seems like we really need a new way of looking at things. Let's use autism as an example. Autism has been historically misunderstood. However, it has also seen a significant evolution in its clinical understanding and societal perception. The term autism was first used in the early 20th century by Swiss psychiatrist Eugen Bleuler to describe a symptom of schizophrenia. However, it was not until the 1940s that autism was more clearly defined as a distinct condition. In 1943, American psychiatrist Leo Kanner published a study describing 11 children with early infantile autism, emphasizing challenges in social interaction and communication. Around the same time, Austrian pediatrician Hans Asperger identified a milder form of autism, now known as Asperger's syndrome, characterized by social difficulties and restrictive interests without significant language delay. The clinical understanding of autism has broadened since these early definitions. Autism was once considered a rare, severe disorder, but it is now recognized as a spectrum condition, or autism spectrum disorder, encompassing a wide range of symptoms and abilities. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or the DSM, has periodically updated its criteria for autism, most notably in 2013 when the DSM-5 merged several related diagnoses under the umbrella term ASD. Autistic individuals have historically faced significant social mistreatment and marginalization. Early interpretations often blamed parents, in particular mothers, for their child's autism, coining the term refrigerator mothers to suggest that cold, unloving parenting caused the disorder. This view, now thoroughly discredited, led to stigma and guilt for many families. Throughout the 20th century, autistic individuals were often placed in institutions, where they were subjected to neglect, poor living conditions, and even abusive treatments. Misunderstanding and fear of the condition contributed to widespread social exclusion, limited opportunities for education and employment, and a general lack of support for autistic people and their families. Autism also intersects with various other aspects of identity, such as race, gender, socioeconomic status, and more, leading to compounded difficulties for many individuals. In recent decades, there has been a significant shift in both clinical understanding and societal attitudes towards autism. Advocacy and the neurodiversity movement, which promotes the idea that neurological differences like autism are natural variations of human experience, have changed perceptions. This movement, which began in the 1990s, emphasizes acceptance and inclusion rather than curing autism. There's also been a push for better support systems, inclusive education, and the protection of rights for autistic individuals. Research has increasingly focused on understanding autism as a spectrum, with a greater appreciation for the strengths and unique perspectives that autistic people can bring to society.
I am now going to argue the following. There are two frameworks offered to understand autism, or even neurodivergence in general. First, we have the neurodiversity paradigm, which understands neurodivergence as simply human variation, but thereby fails to see the faulty system which oppresses and ostracizes neurodivergent individuals. Then we have the social model of disability set, which pathologizes neurodivergence and fails to recognize the domination in that.
The problem I see in the way neurodivergent individuals are treated in society and science boils down to a contradiction that seems unsolvable within a framework of thought that prioritizes economic prosperity, social welfare, predetermined rights, sustainability, and stability. Or in other words, control. The tension between different schools of thought on neurodivergence centers on whether to view it through a medical or social lens. Do we celebrate empowerment, or do we look for ways to fix? Do we support advocacy, or do we pathologize? Ultimately, the conflict arises from balancing the need for support and accommodation with the goal of embracing and integrating neurodivergent individuals into a more inclusive society. In the subsequent parts of this video, I will explore how Max Stirner's philosophy of egoism provides an alternative framework for interpreting these behaviors, which actually, paradoxically, seem much more inclusive than the efforts by a conformist society. In fact, it actually exposes the need of conformist institutions to ostracize and demonize people whose experience is harder to control than those who are properly socialized and conditioned. By emphasizing individual autonomy and critiquing normative pressures, egoism offers a way to understand neurodivergent behaviors not as deficiencies, but as legitimate expressions of personal freedom and self-care. At the heart of Stirner's egoism is the concept of ownness. This refers to the state of being one's own, where an individual recognizes themselves as the sole proprietor of their thoughts, actions, and life. It's a radical form of self-ownership that rejects external authority, societal norms, and notions of legitimacy coming from anywhere but through ownness. In Stirner's view, ownness is achieved when a person acknowledges that they are not bound by any higher power or abstract ideals. Instead, they live according to their desires and interests and engage in self-approval, treating everything else as a tool or means to fulfill their personal goals. However, this does not mean acting recklessly without consideration for others, but we will talk about that in the chapter on the union of egoists. Ultimately, ownness is about embracing uniqueness and living authentically. It's actually quite simple, but incredibly nuanced as well. This is also why it may actually be easier for neurodivergent people to navigate. In Max Stirner's philosophy, societal norms, dogmas, and ideologies that claim to dictate how individuals should behave are called spooks. In the egoist framework, these constructs are viewed as internalizations which seek to categorize and hierarchize people based on illusory concepts which only serve to be deconstructed and eliminated. Egoism is about not only rejecting but also staying in constant vigilance to these parasitic concepts, which are often shrouded in positivity, progress, rights, and humanity, but cause massive levels of systemic inequalities and oppression, not only systemically, but also in the form of subjectivation, a process by which individuals become subjects, shaped by social, cultural, and power structures. It involves the internalization of norms, identities, and roles imposed by society, leading individuals to understand and define themselves within these frameworks. While subjectivation forms one's sense of self, it also implies a level of control or influence exerted by external forces, such as institutions, ideologies, or discourses. This concept, explored by philosophers like Michel Foucault, highlight the tension between the personal identity and the pervasive power dynamics that mold and constrain it. While egoism is all about autonomy, it does not preclude social interactions. Jinnah introduces the concept of the union of egoists, where individuals voluntarily come together based on mutual benefit rather than collective identity. Seems simple, but it's actually a radical notion, because these unions could not function in today's society due to their flexible and openly self-interested nature, which would likely conflict with the rigid structures and expectations of modern social institutions. In a society where loyalty, long-term commitment, and self-sacrifice are prized, the union of egoists challenges these norms by prioritizing temporary and pragmatic alliances formed purely for personal gain. And yes, that probably sounds yucky, but it is nothing more than saying we have a similar goal, maybe we can help each other along the way. However, this simple but radical notion, while not negating them, undermines traditional social bonds like family, nation, or community, which are typically seen as intrinsic or moral obligations. Instead, Jinnah's idea advocates for relationships that dissolve as soon as they no longer serve the individual's interest, but that could also last the entirety of one's life. So, what's the difference, really? As I mentioned before, it almost seems as if autistic individuals, for example, may have an easier time in an egoist environment, where self-expression would be considered individual to each individual, and the normative pressures that dictate behavior and social interactions just simply wouldn't exist. But Jinnah did not give us a utopian ideal, so don't even let your mind wander there. He gave us a framework to understand the various ways in which we let the world limit our ownness. The stigmatization of neurodivergent individuals, rooted in a misunderstanding of their behaviors and communication styles, is a clear example of how societal norms and expectations can suppress individuality. These misconceptions, such as viewing neurodivergent people as rude, lacking empathy, or socially awkward, reflect the rigid frameworks within which society often operates, demanding conformity to a typical way of interacting and thinking. From an egoist perspective, this not only harms neurodivergent individuals but also undermines the potential for authentic and diverse expressions of self. Egoism, particularly as articulated by Max Jinnah, posits that individuals should not be bound by external moralities, norms, or expectations that do not serve their personal interests or authentic expression. Neurodivergent individuals whose neurological patterns differ from societal norms exemplify the tension between individuality and conformity. The societal demand that everyone understand and respond to social cues in the same way reflects a collective identity that egoism rejects. Egoism advocates for embracing one's own uniqueness and acting according to one's self-interest without being burdened by the expectations of others. From this perspective, the neurodivergent individual's struggle with social cues would not be viewed as a deficiency or rudeness. Instead, it would be recognized as a unique mode of being, one that does not owe conformity to the neurotypical majority. The accusation of rudeness, therefore, is not a reflection of the person's character, of course, but rather a manifestation of society's unwillingness to accommodate diverse expressions of self. In the context of social interactions, Stirner introduces the concept of the union of egoists, which again is a voluntary association of individuals who come together based on mutual benefit and personal interest, rather than conformity to a collective identity. This concept offers a radical rethinking of how neurodivergent individuals might engage in social relationships. Rather than being forced to fit into predetermined social norms that do not resonate with their way of being, neurodivergent individuals could form or participate in unions where their unique modes of communication and interaction are respected and valued. For instance, in a union of egoists, the need for clarity, detail, or personal space, often perceived as peculiar or inconvenient by neurotypical standards, would be seen as legitimate and actually totally important. Furthermore, the union would exist only as long as it serves the interests of its members, and it would dissolve when it no longer does so. This flexibility and focus on mutual benefit challenge the notion that relationships must adhere to rigid, socially imposed standards of interaction. Instead, relationships become spaces where individual needs and preferences are prioritized, which ultimately allows for genuine connection without the pressure to conform. From an egoist perspective, these misconceptions are spooks, which serve as tools of control that reinforce societal norms and suppress individuality. By labeling neurodivergent behaviors as rude or lacking empathy, society effectively marginalizes those who do not conform and pressure them to suppress their authentic selves in favor of an inauthentic normativity. Egoism challenges this by asserting that no external standard should dictate how an individual should be or act, especially when such standards serve to marginalize. Neurodivergent individuals, like all individuals, have the right to define their interactions and relationships on their own terms, free from coercive pressures or societal expectations. So, what have we learned? As with so many other things, Stirner's egoism seems to bridge a gap, which seems unbridgeable in conformist society. And that includes this weird, jumbled version of individualistic but somehow still deeply conformist society, prevalent in pretty much all versions of society Western states have attempted to form. Max Stirner's egoism offers the transformative perspective for understanding neurodivergence by simultaneously challenging normative pressures, representing the realities people endure due to the illusions of society, as well as offering a framework for the individual celebration of one's own autonomy, agency, and the fluidity of experience. This philosophical framework provides a way to reinterpret neurodivergent behaviors as expressions of self-care and ownness, rather than deficiencies or flaws. It also obliterates the potential of fetishization or the neglect of intersectional aspects of neurodivergent realities. I find myself, as always when considering an egoist framework of understanding, deeply in awe of the strange nature of egoist philosophy, which is so often villainized and hailed to be ethically deplorable, but somehow manages to be so much more inclusive and simultaneously critical of the systems in place, which we are taught to view as the epitome of progress, knowledge, and humanity. The application of egoism to neurodivergence not only challenges harmful stereotypes, but also promotes greater acceptance of all individuals. It encourages a shift away from rigid normative standards and towards a recognition of individual differences as legitimate and valuable. And I don't know about you, but I feel like that is worth giving some consideration.
Well, that's it. I really hope you enjoyed it. We had a ball making it. Thank you very much.